Hello, Craig Yambor here. Let me ask a question. Can we shift our mindset on a daily basis to use formative assessment strategies to drive a higher quality learning environment? After studying the 7 strategies of assessment for learning by Jan Chapuis, I would expect someone to be well positioned to introduce formative assessment into their classroom and evaluate students not for the purposes of a grade, but in an effort to adjust learning content and improve the likelihood for students to master targets. I have been challenged to evaluate this content from a different perspective than most while serving as a substitute. This has hampered my ability to explore the longer-term dynamics and forced me to be creative about incorporating formative mindset into my daily interactions. Certainly, use of the 7 strategies will only yield the most effective results when considered as a whole and incorporated into a well-planned classroom environment. But perhaps just thinking with a formative mindset each day could help. Just think about the essential questions. Where are we going? Where am I now? What is needed to close the gap? Can we shift our interactions with students to focus on formative evaluations so that we can learn what needs to come next? In Strategy 1, we are asked to develop clear, understandable learning targets so our students can answer that first question, where are we going? Only seconds into a lesson in a strange classroom, one can identify why this is so important. Certainly, most plans provide guidance on the content to be introduced during a lesson and usually at least a partial reveal of the target. But when it is posted right there on the wall or some other central reference point like the Google Classroom, it can be leveraged as a guide point like a lighthouse. For example, when working toward mastery of mathematical order of operations, one can push the students to remember that the first key step is to know the correct sequence. Whether you prefer good old Aunt Sally or purple elephants, we want to get that acronym on the top of the worksheet and execute in the correct order. Given similar math practice without the target can result in lost effort. Perhaps the students are now focused on isolating the variable. Review of the former may not hurt, but it certainly isn't focused on the current target. Strategy 2 remains focused on the question, where are we going, and pushes us to leverage strong and weak examples. This allows students to freely explore samples of the desired result and frequent missteps. In a recent activity, I worked with students to produce job advertisements, but the initial attempts revealed most were developing dry descriptions of the field of work. An adjustment was needed. I whipped up some example phrases and worked with the students to identify online samples we could critique together. And successive attempts improved. In Strategy 3, we shift to a question, where are we now? And as a substitute, that is often what one is trying to figure out. So you can't be bashful about surveying the students or observing them during practice work to clarify what they're capable of. The daily gems one can adopt from this section include shifts in language. First, one can make every attempt to make mistakes acceptable. You might say, yes, you made a mistake this time, but I'm sure we can figure out what went wrong so you can prevent it in the future. Now mistake became a challenge. Another shift is in a growth mindset-oriented language. Any kid chipping away at practice work is putting in effort, so you can say, I can see you already put a lot of work into this problem. Let's see if we can step through it and figure out what you can focus on so you get it right every time. Teaching students to truly self-assess, generate peer feedback, and set goals for Strategy 4 definitely requires long-term effort. However, once again, shifts in mindset and language can help even for short-term engagements. Leading questions are often the key. One could ask a student to compare their work to an example or rubric and identify a couple successful elements. Likewise, one can challenge a student to be honest and find something they feel they could improve in their work. If you can work with them to find a gap, make it a goal to correct it. In Strategies 5 and 6, it is even more challenging to effect change without long-term continuity as we shift focus to the question, how can we close the gap? We evaluate assessment evidence to isolate learning needs, then design focused instruction and practice to improve the student's trajectory. This phase probably seems more intuitive for educators. A teacher that knows exactly what their students need is likely to act on it. We all do this daily. For example, working again on order of operations, it is common to observe students executing all multiplication before division. Instinctively, a teacher will reintroduce the left to right rule and push the student to practice more. Finally, in Strategy 7, we try to equip the student with skills and opportunity to develop a metacognitive understanding of their own learning. We involve them in compilation and reflection on the extended body of their work to show them trends of how they individually grow and the value of their efforts. It would be difficult to do this in a small measure like the other day-to-day examples, but it does in some respects represent the holy grail of education. So maybe the best thing we can do on a daily basis is just to keep our sights set toward the learning goal of developing students that are inspired and aware of their own learning.